Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm today's host, Coleman Hodges. Joining us today, he has been the head coach at Nashville Aquatic Club for the last 40 years. During his tenure, NAC has won over 40 LSC team championship titles. This man has brought home 11 Southeastern Swimming LSC Coach of the Year awards. He has netted Nashville 15 gold medal club awards. He's put 65 plus Olympic trial qualifiers, 30 national or national team junior team members, 26 national finalists. He's won USA Swimming Development Coach of the Year 3 times. Today, we are sitting down with John Morse, who just announced his retirement from Nashville. John, thanks so much for joining us. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me, Coleman. Appreciate it.
This episode of the SwimSwam podcast is sponsored by Commit Swimming, SwimSwam's exclusive team management software partner. Since 2015, Commit has been providing coaches with swimming's leading workout management software. And now, Commit has team management software too. Commit wants to help you make the switch from Team Unify to a simpler, more powerful solution. Their onboarding and customer service team will walk you through every step of the way. Check them out at commitswimming.com to book your demo today. That's COMMIT swimming.com. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about this this long and illustrious career you've spent in Nashville. But first off, just what made now the right time for you to take a step back to look at retirement? You're moving. I think things are going to settle down and be a little quieter for you, and I think you're going to be a little closer to family now.
Yeah, that's true. We're moving to Beaufort, South Carolina. My wife's down there now setting up the house. Got about 3 weeks to go here. The timing question, it's sort of a feel thing, Coleman. I felt like it was just time to go. Done a lot, been here a long time. The club is in excellent shape, and the leadership team between Doug and the board is really nicely set up for a transition, and I feel like the club's on solid foot to continue to grow and prosper. And honestly, I wanted to step away when I was young enough and physically fit enough to do some other things that I really want to enjoy in life. When you're coaching, you're pretty much tied to a swimming pool almost all of the time. And there's a lot of stuff that you miss out on, and a lot of things that over the years you really start to think about, wow, I'd really like to go do this or go do that. And so that's kind of the plan.
Well, just congrats. I mean, obviously you have had a great career in Nashville. I'm excited to hear more about it, but just congrats to making it to this finish line and also to get to another starting line and get to go enjoy some things that maybe you haven't had the time or gotten the opportunity to do. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So sorry, I feel like that was maybe the ending of a conversation, but we're just getting started here. So I do want to take it maybe back to the beginning a little. I know you grew up in the South. We were just talking, you're from Florida. But what drew you to Nashville in 1984? And what was the club like when you got there?
Well, I grew up in St. Augustine, Florida, swam at the University of Florida. And I swam with Tracy and Amy Calkins, who, were stars at Florida and at the Nashville Aquatic Club before Florida. And so I originally came to Nashville to participate in an international meet way back in the 70s. And I came as a coach for the first time in 1982, I came up to do a ASCA internship, which is kind of code word for slave labor back then. I would help with practice in the morning, lessons during the middle of the day, take care of the pool in the afternoon, and then practice again and throw in some master's workouts in there. That was kind of a whole summer of that.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I went back to Gainesville to finish up my college degree. And the next year, the fall of 1983, Ron Young was the head coach, and he called and offered me a job to be the senior assistant coach, which I accepted, and fully expecting to come to Nashville for a year, maybe two, learn about coaching, learn about clubs, and then move back to Florida and start my career there, and hopefully live happily ever after. But anyway, as it happened, the next year after Olympic trials of '84, Ron decided to retire from coaching. And so I was offered the job at the Nashville Aquatic Club. And when I took that job, because I had nothing else to do, the club was basically bankrupt. The pool had been kind of pieced together from used parts, maybe 8 or 10 years before that. So it was falling apart. And it was, jumped right into a struggle. But on the plus side, we had some really good swimmers. A girl named Jennifer Lowe was a national finalist. Chaz Morton, who was coming up as a age group kid, and Julie Darby went on to win junior nationals and 200 fly, and just a whole group of pretty good young swimmers coming up. So as with most coaches, I was focused on, wow, we got some good kids. I'm going to stay here and see what happens. And so I kind of dove in and learned a lot along the way, and gradually was able to build the program up after the pool eventually failed. And with the help of Ron Young, who was still in town, and the Calkins family, we were able to get the city of Nashville to agree to build the pool that we use now, the Centennial Sportsplex. And that's kind of an interesting story, because the mayor at the time, a guy named Richard Fulton, his wife was a competitive swimmer. And so that was the end. And in talking with her, we were able to get the city on board with, let's see what we can do. And Hospital Corporation of America owned a big chunk of land that they had a hospital on one side and another hospital on the other side. And the city had the land in the middle, where there was a tennis complex and an ice rink. And so the mayor was able to create a deal where the city would turn that piece of land over to the hospital so they could consolidate their administration. And in exchange, Hospital Corporation of America got agreed to come in and rebuild the tennis center, rebuild the hockey rink, and also build a 50-meter indoor pool, which is the Centennial Sportsplex. And so it was a land swap deal and a no money cost to the city deal, which worked out great, and we've been there ever since.
And when was that?
That was the end of 1989, January 1990.
Oh, wow.
Was the first meet that we had in there.
Okay. So yeah, that's been there. I mean, I've been to that pool. It's
Still
a
looks
great
good.
facility. Still looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was so early into your tenure. That's great. I also didn't realize that you came there to be the senior assistant, and then 1 year later, we're kind of thrown in as head coach. Did your boss at the time know he was retiring after in 1984? Did you know?
Nobody knew. I don't think he knew. Maybe his wife
Okay.
knew because she was ready for him to get out of there. But Ron went on into commercial real estate and has done really well. He's still here in the community.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Okay.
when I first came here, I was a senior assistant coach, and head age group coach was Chris Kubik. He went on to Texas
Wow.
fame, obviously.
Uh-huh.
So that was kind of interesting. And then when I took over my first coaching staff, I had a guy named Steve Dempsey. And Steve moved to Georgia and worked with Jack Bowerly. We had another guy, Jack Hazen, who's still around the community, but Jack Hazen was Jack Bowerly's roommate when they swam together at Georgia. And the second group, we had Donald Gibb, who went on to coach at South Carolina and Florida State. He was the head age group coach. And John Brucato, who just passed away, went to his funeral yesterday. Great coach.
Yeah.
He was also on that second staff.
Okay.
It's funny when you go through so many years, it becomes defined by these groups of coaches that ultimately move on and have their own careers. So that's the way I remember it anyway.
Certainly, right? And I mean, when you spend as much time as coaches do with each other and with your athletes, like you know, you build memories, there are lasting stories, but also it's just, as you said, there are eras because each year is a team, right? And each as you said, staff certainly is a team unto itself. I'm curious, just that that first year of being a head coach, what do you feel like were your biggest hurdles, or maybe your biggest lessons, or maybe not even the first year, but just, going into it, not really expecting to be a head coach of a club. What do you feel like the biggest learning lessons were for you in that time period?
I felt like every day was a challenge and every day was a lesson learned or a mistake made, and hopefully a lesson learned so the mistakes aren't repeated. I swam for Randy Reese at Florida, and I took a lot of the early part of my coaching from what Randy did.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy that I was working for, Ron Young, was a very organized team builder and community, basing the team on the community and getting people involved. So I learned a lot from that. I made a tremendous number of mistakes, as everybody does. But the one thing that early in my career that I decided was, okay, if I'm going to be a swimming coach and I want to be successful, you kind of have two paths. You can either kind of hang out and talk with and be with the coaches that are your age. The problem with that is I was a head coach at 23 years old, and there's not any experienced coaches at 23 years old. So I made a decision. I'm going to befriend a whole group of successful coaches and kind of use them as mentors and bounce ideas off of them, tell them my problems, and listen to solutions before I make decisions. And that was a very wise thing to do. And I was fortunate that group of people were so helpful. But one thing that you'll find in coaching is that most coaches want to help. It's sort of second nature to them. That's why they're doing this. And, if you're a young coach, if you reach out to people and get their opinion, take their advice, you're going to be a lot better off in the long run.
Yeah. Who are the coaches that come to mind that did help you during that time?
Well, Randy Reese, of course.
Hmm.
Greg Troy was one of them. A great coach named John Woods, who's retired now. Coach named John Mason, who's still coaching a little bit up in Maryland. And there were others as we went through the years that I leaned on, but all a great group of guys.
Yeah. Um, did I think communication 40 years ago is so different than
Oh
and
yeah.
now, just or keeping in touch. Was it a lot of phone calls? Was it, did you go visit these people in person? Was it writing letters? Which I personally makes me sad that there aren't more letters written today. But how did you keep in touch? But also, what kinds of questions were you asking them, or how were you leaning on them?
Well, no letter writing. I understand what you're saying, but nobody can read my writing anyway. So uh, it was mostly phone calls, although, I would go and visit. Um, when you're a young coach, you're all eat up with it. And
Yeah.
our schedule back then was just stupid. You would have the end of the season might be 5 weeks straight of swim meets. So
Mhm.
you're around people at meets and you can interact with them then. But mostly it was phone calls as something would come up, and you know that's probably still the best way to do it. Maybe uh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of feel like today there's so much information and so much of it is wrong
Mm.
that how does anybody filter through that to get at something that's going to be helpful? And I think it's pretty clear that people have a hard time with that.
Absolutely. And even maybe in any era, I think filtering through information and kind of finding your way, or finding what what is true for you, is important. Certainly, as someone who is leading a group of young people, uh, to maybe figure out what is important for them. And so I'm curious as to, as a young coach who was leading this team with, as you said, a lot of promising athletes, but a lot of just young people generally, regardless of their level of athleticism, how you developed your coaching philosophy, or what felt good for you in terms of writing workouts, but also just building a team.
How did I develop my philosophy? Well, I I spent some time early on just thinking about it, and the thing that I settled on is uh, my goal is to allow each of the athletes to go as far as their talent and desire would take them, and within that philosophy, which I still think is the right answer. Um, Within that philosophy, there's a lot of room there for different levels of ability.
Mm.
So, certainly if you have an Alex Walsh, you got this very high ceiling of, what the expectation is. But, you take more pride, or as much pride, in a kid that's just mediumly talented that gets all the way to the national championships. That just works harder, um, does whatever it takes, and that brings the whole team along. It's not just your very best kids; it's how do you get all of the kids performing at a high level, and then that sort of morphs into, all right, how do I get kids to swim fast in every event?
Mm.
You can't train the group as distance swimmers and expect to have great breaststrokers, right? And you can't just focus on backstroke because I've got a really good backstroker. So you want to make sure they get what they need. But you still have to pay attention to what we're doing at IM and fly. And so then that becomes another piece of the philosophy of, all right, as a developmental coach, which is what I am, I basically want all of the kids to be IMers. I want them to be proficient IM. So maybe they're a great distance freestyler, but that doesn't mean they can't be really good at the 400 IM. And who knows, maybe even the 200 IM. And we got a guy right now, Max Schubin, who's an excellent 400 IMer and a miler, but he's also a really good 100 breaststroker. That's an odd combination, but if you work on it, you may be surprised. So that's part of the philosophy too, is let's pay attention to what's in front of us instead of trying to dictate that this is what everybody's going to do. Let's look at the individuals. Let's actually think a little bit or a lot about, okay, how can we maximize the potential of these different swimmers? And let's also communicate with the athletes that, their job is the motivation. We can come in and we can have a plan, but they've got to show up, and they got to show up ready to train hard, and they got to bring focus to each practice. And if they can do that, then we can help them on the other end with what they need to be doing. And it's also, third piece is communicating with them. There's an awful lot of communication in our program, coach to athlete, one-on-one, about what they need to do and help to show them, this is the path, here's the path, this is how you move on to the next. Here's the things that we saw in this season that were good. Here's the things that we saw that really you've got to elevate, and then be consistent and be patient and sort of herd them in the right direction to make it happen.
I'm sure there are several, but do you have one such example of an athlete who you really had to consider or think about? I personally love that philosophy of not everyone's going to do the same thing, or we can't just do one size fits all. We have to consider what is in front of us. Let's say pre new pool. So in those first 5 years in your time as a head coach, do you have one such example of an athlete who you really had to think about or consider that maybe challenged you in terms of figuring out a plan for what would work best for them?
Yeah, I'm struggling to come up with one example because there's so many of them. I mean, it really is an all the time thing, Coleman. It's a constant day-to-day thing. And almost every athlete that's come through in our time here, we've had to make adjustments for. And you just have to change the mindset and be willing to do that. And take the time and communicate. I'm sure if you ask the swimmers, they would be able to give you some examples of things that we do, but it really is all the time. We run a practice. It's a quality-oriented practice, maybe on a Friday afternoon. We may have 4 different sets going on, with 25 athletes. So there's a lot that happens, but that's what you have to do to get them prepared for their particular event that's coming up.
No, that's what you want to hear. I mean, hearing that is reminiscent to me of many of the college programs I've gotten to witness and had the privilege of observing their practices. And again, that's what Nashville seems to do, is produce swimmers who are ready to go enter that college system of swimming. And perhaps in part that's a reason why. I am curious as to how, as you got further into your head coaching career, and you also started building your family outside of the pool, how you balanced work and life, which is, I think, a big conversation with a lot of swim coaches, because I think that's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, it's almost impossible,
Yeah.
particularly when you're a young guy, right? Because you're
Yeah.
indestructible. And I mean, I talk to other coaches all the time. When I was first starting out, I felt like what I had to do was outwork everybody. And that's not a bad philosophy, but it doesn't work over time. And so you got to work smart, right? Not just work. And I remember the first year I ran morning practice on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and that's 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And every afternoon during the week, and then one on Saturday. But we had people that couldn't get there. Well, they had to leave early because of school.
Mhm.
So then the logical thing you do is you start a separate group at 4:45 in the morning, right? Which seems crazy now when you think about it. But remember, I would get to the end of the week and I'd be brain damaged. I couldn't remember the kids' names from lack of sleep. I can imagine how they felt. So over time, we dropped off one of the mornings, and the kids got better. And then years later, we dropped off another morning, and the kids were swimming faster again. And then we finally dropped off another morning, and they're still swimming faster. So it's just a lesson learned about pay attention, but also try different things. And it's not all about how hard you're working. Working hard is important, for sure. But hard doesn't mean this massive volume or more practices than everybody else. It means the intensity that you can bring, and the focus. Focus is even more important, that you bring to practice each and every day. Be that the coach's focus or the swimmer's focus, but it's the focus, and that's how they're going to get better ultimately. Did that answer the question? I'm not
Well,
sure.
yeah, I don't want to be redundant, because that was a fantastic answer. But I am still curious. Again, as you're aging into your tenure as a head coach, how you balance work and life, or
Yeah,
life outside the pool.
yeah. I think I did a bad job of it when I was younger. The one thing that I would do is, like in the summers, if I had a Wednesday afternoon off, I would go out in a boat in the middle of the lake and just sit out there and not talk to anybody. Because you spend so much
Yeah.
time talking to so many people, you just needed to get away. And that was pre-cell phone days. So when I was out there, nobody could bug me. Um, Later on, I felt like the thing that balanced my life later in the career was when I got married 12 and a half years ago. And that changed everything dramatically, because all of a sudden, I had a family to go home to, and family obligations, which were great, and a wonderful wife who supported what I was doing, but also would tell me when I was overdoing it and to knock it off and take care of myself. But yes, that is the challenge, and it's not easy. The only other thing I can add to that is one thing that I did. I think in 1996, I bought a house that was, I don't know, 3-4 minute drive from the pool, so I was close. Before that, I was driving like 30 minutes, which
Oh my gosh.
not good. And
Not.
I also think about how many years we were traveling to meets, and when we went to a meet, it was usually in 15 passenger vans. So you'd load up the vans with swimmers, and you'd drive to a meet and may go 3 days, prelim finals, like the ultra swim in Charlotte outside in the sun. And then after the last day, you get in the van and you drive back at night. Just crazy stuff that nobody should do, but that's what we did. That's how you would get the kids to go to the meet, you know?
Yeah. No, swim coaches are a bit insane, I think sometimes.
Yeah,
But as you said, that's what you do, and I think often coaches have that mindset, right? Of just like, this is what you do to get the job done, because that's my goal,
right.
is to um to do whatever I need to do to accomplish this task in front of me. But it is nice when you have someone who will push back, right? Or will push back
Yeah,
in favor of you
yeah,
and not what
exactly.
your other priorities are.
Yeah, it's definitely necessary.
Yeah,
I'm glad that we're, as a group, that coaches are talking about mental health and longevity, because it's a crazy way to make a living. Very few people are ultimately successful, and successful in my mind is that life balance as well as performance. And there's just very few that have been able to do it and do it right and do it long term.
absolutely. And what comes to mind for me is Greg Meehan recently saying he took Wednesday afternoons off to go play golf, which is
Yeah,
reminiscent to taking Wednesday afternoons off and going and sitting on a boat and not talking to
yeah,
anyone.
yeah. Same
which
thing.
which again to me is a lost art. I think more people should go out in the wilderness and not
Yeah,
talk and just be silent.
get away.
It's it's
Another
good.
part of the whole kind of coaching dynamic is, most people don't make any money coaching.
Mhm.
Um, and that leads many, many good coaches to move on to something else. And I think it's hard for coaches to conceptualize the idea of, um, you have to develop a financial engine within your club before you, as the leader of the club, are going to start making money. So, we're all focused on getting kids to swim fast and focused on high performance and high performance kids. That's not where any money is. That's a loser financially all the time. Um, so you have to develop an organization that brings in income, be that a tremendous number of competitive swimmers, which isn't that great of a financial producer, but it does work, like Swim Atlanta does, or other ways of bringing in money. And, for us, we were able to develop, our team is only 250 swimmers. I don't know if many people know that. It's not a large competitive team, but we've got 150 non-competitive swimmers who pay a lot of money. They're not registered with USA Swimming. They do little like inter squad meets, and we get some great swimmers out of that onto the regular team. But it is a money producer. We've got a master's program that's about 200, and that's a money producer. We've got a lesson program that's a money producer. Between all of that, then you're able to develop the income. For example, I think when I started out at Nashville Aquatic Club, the annual budget was maybe $100,000, and now we're in the neighborhood of 2 million. And so, obviously, as the head coach, even if you're producing great athletes and there's only $100,000 there, you're not going to make much money. I
Mhm.
think I started out making $20,000 a year, and It wasn't until we moved into the new pool and were able to get the city to deregulate things enough that we really started to be able to increase that income, allow us to hire more coaches, allowed us to hire better coaches, pay the head coach more, create a environment where there's not so much work for any one individual and you could focus on the quality of it. And that's a process. It just doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. I really appreciate, this is why you're here, John. This is the insight that I knew you had, because as you said, so many coaches don't stick around, and I think there's a reason that you have been in one spot for over 4 decades. I think if someone has done something that long at the level that you have, they're doing something right. Um, and I think that's something that probably isn't talked about or focused on enough in swimming, is not only, yeah, like you said, everyone wants fast swimmers, but we don't think about what is sustainable and what might, how you get fast swimmers other than just working really hard, right? And
Right.
that's enticing people to swim and keeping it a positive place.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah. So I loved listening to that. And again, I think you hit on so many great points. I had no idea that Nashville Aquatic Club was only 250 swimmers on the club team. I also had no idea you had a 200 swimmer masters team. Um,
Yeah,
so go ahead.
Ashley Whitney's our master's coach.
Mhm.
She was on the Olympic team in '96 and swam with us growing up until about the age of 13. But she does a great job. She's phenomenal.
That's incredible. So yeah, a few questions about those things. Just with the masters swimming, um, what do you feel that, apart from the financial side, obviously, what do you feel that adds to your team or the team environment? Because I think having a robust masters program is a huge asset, but also just it involves so much more of the community at large.
Yeah, without a doubt. We have lots of former swimmers that swim in the masters group. We've got lots of people that have a lot of financial means and a lot of connections that they're interested in the competitive team. They're interested in how we're doing. They're very excited when we have somebody doing something on the national level, and they're always willing to step in and help, whether it's at swim meets or provide sponsorships and different things for the team. So it is really important. One of our main goals is for the team to be a part of the Nashville community. We don't go out and try to attract swimmers from other areas of the country to come in and swim with us. We occasionally get people to move in, which is, they just happen to move here. It's not us going and trying to recruit them or anything. So we're looking for kids that are in the community that want to be competitive swimmers. And we want them to feel like a part of a community organization. And as you know, when you're involved in a swim team, you're spending a big chunk of your life at the pool. And the parents are spending a lot of time getting the kids to and from and going to swim meets. And, it better be a group of people that you really like and you want to be around. And that's what we strive to provide. And the interesting part of it, just from being here 40 years, it seems like invariably whenever, if I go out to dinner or something, or we may be 30 miles from Nashville, going on a going kayaking or something, we run into somebody that swam, 25 years ago, and they recognize me and say hi, and my wife's like, "Oh my gosh, we can never get away." But there's something good about that, it's a good feeling.
Um, Man, again, just I feel like I'm getting a master class in how to run a swim club, just because you're saying so many things that resonate of just how you build your community and um, how you entice your community to stay involved, stay invested. And with everything that's going on in swimming right now, and specifically with USA Swimming, I think these are great lessons to hear and talk about, because this is what you want out of your sport is to not only achieve at the highest level and get kids in a good place moving forward, but have them stick around and have them loving their sport into their 20s and 30s and 50s and 70s. And you bring up Nashville, and it sounds like a lot of people are sticking around, right? Even after they swim, they're coming back to swim masters and they're staying in Nashville. And a lot of times I hear that Austin, Texas, and Nashville are kind of like sister cities. I spent 7 years in Austin. I love Austin, Texas. It's incredibly robust swimming scene, right? Tons of swim clubs, tons of masters swim clubs, and seemingly everyone who swims at UT doesn't leave. They just stick around in Austin and forever. Um, and so I'm curious because I haven't spent much time in Nashville. I came to film with you once, and that's pretty much my only time I've been to Nashville. So I'm just curious, for you. You've been there for 40 plus years. What makes Nashville as a city so special, and certainly as a swimming city?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. My nephew Cole Crane swam at Texas. Just finished up a little while ago. Now he's
Yeah,
coaching at Waterloo. So he's an
exactly.
example of somebody that just doesn't, people don't leave. And we
Yeah.
have two former swimmers that just also took jobs, former Nashville Aquatic Club swimmers that just took jobs at Waterloo. So
Okay.
maybe there is somewhat of a sister city. I don't know. Nashville, when I moved here, was a pretty quiet town, honestly. Um, and I think about the time that the Tennessee Titans moved here, it really started to
Mm.
accelerate in the growth and has just exploded, in the last decade or more. There's good and there's bad in that. Um, the good is, if you have some real estate, you make a lot of money as the prices go up, which has worked out great for my family. Um, the bad is you get all the traffic, just like you do in Austin, lots of traffic. But it is a great town. It's becoming a much bigger city, and it has a bigger city feel. And much like Austin, our pool, like the University of Texas pool, is kind of in the downtown area, call it
Mhm.
Midtown. And most of the socioeconomic group that's going to become swimmers are more to the south. So for our team, there's a lot of commuting that has to happen. And so that's difficult. Um, I mean, I have an opinion on USA Swimming and teams. I really think there's way too many teams, uh, and there should be more focus on good quality teams. Um, and we're seeing some of that here in Nashville. We're doing great, but we don't need as many teams as we have, and I think almost any communities like that. If you consolidated some of the training groups, you probably get a better quality training group
Mm.
than what you currently have. And if you could consolidate some of the leadership, you would probably get a better operation than what you have in some of these programs. All that to say, I mean, Nashville's a great place to live. Obviously, I've been here a long time, so I must have liked it, right?
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, I just, as you mentioned, it's not a huge club, but we've seen so many great athletes, swimmers specifically, come out of Nashville. Um, and then again, yeah, like you said, in the last decade, similarly to how kind of Austin just continued to grow and grow and grow, Nashville's kind of blown up. And I've personally just seen a lot of people go to Nashville and end up there, um, for their work or just because they wanted to live there or whatever it is. So
Yeah,
yeah,
we
so
certainly have a lot of people moving in. Just in my neighborhood, a whole bunch from California, New York have moved in lately. But people from all over, and it's a thriving community. It's doing great.
yeah. Well, that's good to hear. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Walsh sisters. You brought them up earlier, but first I want to ask you about Doug Waram, and he has been I guess he's assuming the head coach, but he has been for 14 seasons the associate head coach and senior coordinator. And I'm curious just your history with Doug and where you found him, where you met him, and what he has meant to the club moving forward. Because again, when I came to film there, he was kind of the one who was running practice and kind of doing a lot. And it seems like you've got someone good to fill your shoes.
Yeah, I think Doug's great, and he's going to do an outstanding job. He's already been doing a great job. He's a very hard worker, exceptionally intelligent guy. He applied for the senior assistant job. I guess it's been about 14 years ago. And a friend of mine, TJ Liston, who was coaching up in Lynchburg, recommended him. And Doug had been a head coach of a YMCA team up there, and he came and interviewed. I distinctly remember driving him around and talking with him about the summer games, different stuff, and he jumped right in and did an outstanding job. He and I, or some of the athletes, were talking to me this week saying that we're kind of the yin and the yang. He's the real high energy, very gung-ho, and I'm more of the thinking about it and steady, and we kind of balance each other out. And that relationship has been really good for the athletes. And we've worked together for so long that we don't even have to talk about it. If some athlete isn't doing what we think they're capable of, and Doug might get frustrated and throw his hands up and come over and say, "You got to talk to this kid." And so then I would go talk to the kid, and vice versa, and we just kind of work well together to, get people moving in the right direction and keep them moving in the right direction. And it's constant back and forth. And he's going to do great. His wife, Sarah, runs our non-competitive group. She's awesome. We've got Ashley Blackburn, who's our admin person. She's also doing a wonderful job. And we got a couple of coaches coming in. Jack Folcarelli, who was here previously for a number of years. He's been up at Eagle. So he's going to come back in as an associate head coach. And Nate Murray, who's been the head coach at South Carolina Swim Club. He'll be starting in August as well. So we've got a really good coaching staff put together. And our board of directors is also a really good group. It's myself, Jeremy Horgan, he's the Vanderbilt coach, used to work with me for quite a while, and then he's been coaching Vanderbilt for a long time. So he's the board president. And then we've got Tom Wiseman, whose kids swam for us, and he was on the board in the early 90s, so he's coming back. And then Hayes Johnson's dad, Jerry Johnson, who's retired from banking, he's also on the board, as well as
great.
myself. So it's a solid group, and Doug is set up to do very well, and he's earned that. He's been a very good coach for many years here, so he's put in his time for sure.
Did Hayes Johnson swim at Nashville?
Yeah,
for
he
Nashville?
grew up swimming in Lakeside in Louisville.
Okay.
And then moved here maybe when he was 12, perhaps 13, and swam all the way through with us.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. That's great. And then went on to swim at Texas.
Yep,
right?
sure did.
And I met him in Austin. Swam with him a few times at
he and Missy live here in town.
Yeah, so, and now he's married to fellow swimmer and Olympian Missy Franklin.
Right.
That's great. Well, see, so many Nashville roots. You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
So it seems like the club is in good hands with Doug moving forward. And obviously the biggest two names to come out of Nashville as of late were Alex and Gretchen Walsh, who I had the pleasure of getting to interview for the first time the first time I did an interview with them when they were a junior and sophomore in high school, I think. Yeah. Which is pretty cool. But just when you have athletes like that who, I mean, I think Alex was still with you when she went to Pan American Games, right? And
yes,
won
for sure.
won gold medals. When you have athletes like that, again, how do you not only apply your philosophy of just kind of adjusting things to them, but also just toe the line of, hey, I'm not going to change my philosophy because we have these athletes who might be such outliers from a lot of our other athletes?
Yeah, well, that's really, I want to say it's a simple thing. I guess it's not simple, but again, if you're just thinking about each of the swimmers and trying to decide what's going to be best for them, then logically for somebody like an Alex Walsh, who's an excellent trainer and works hard every day, as long as you have some good guys in the program, she can be competitive with them day to day, and you don't have to change a whole lot. Of course, as you focus in on specific events and these international type of trials and meets, then you do have to provide times for them to do whatever extra there is. And so as we would do that, we would create like an extra practice. During the school year, we typically have a double on Saturday. I talked about not doing as many mornings, but we double up on Saturday, and the Saturday afternoon practice is a quality-oriented practice where we're doing a lot of different specific sets and a lot of pace and timing for individual events. And when we would get around a trials type meet, we would run an extra Saturday afternoon practice for just those very few kids that we're trying to elevate specifically for that trials event. So then you can pretty much one-on-one coach them to get them sharpened up exactly where they need to be. So it doesn't interfere with what everybody else does, but you're adding extra.
What stood out to you about the Walsh sisters outside of their swimming?
Outside of their swimming, when Gretchen was young, and you saw her, she was this tall, lanky, lean kid, big feet, big hands, and I remember telling her dad, I think, when I look at her outside of the pool, she just looks like she's fast. She's just, there's no resistance there. And you're like, holy moly, look at this. And I guess the one or two things that stood out about them. Number one, great parents, really outstanding parents, did a phenomenal job. We talked a little bit about coaches and mental health. Well, their parents did great with the swimmers' mental health. They kept, everything else that's going on in life in focus and not let swimming become all consuming. They would come and sit down and talk with us as coaches when they needed to do something with the kids, or they felt like there needed to be a break. And that was always a discussion and compromise and come up with the best solution. So parents is a big, big thing. Secondly, those girls are great. Well, they're great kids and they're great students, and they just want to do things well. So that's internal. They just have an internal thing where they want to do things well. And of course, they're exceptionally talented, but they bring those other factors to it. And they're caring and good with the team. They're not a burden on the team. They're there for the young kids. They're there to help. They come home and they interact. Even now with the swimmers, they interact with the coaches. They want to do whatever they can to help. So they're very giving. So good kids, good family.
It's great to hear. That now that you say, if you ever have the chance, if you're listening, if you ever have the chance to talk to the Walsh parents at a swim meet, do it, because I will echo your sentiments. They've got good heads on their shoulders, and they pass that on to their children. Certainly. I feel like now that you said that, I remember them talking about, taking breaks when the sisters were in high school, and just, stepping away for a few days and not making it all consuming.
And doing it the right way, coming and talking to us and saying, all right, this is what we're seeing. And we may say, okay, but, and then, come to a compromise, and it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's great when parents do that. And it's also great when you have a coach that can compromise, or, isn't just going to say, well, they have to be at practice 100%, no, no conversation.
Absolutely.
This is my last real question, but it's hopefully a fun one. You've coached so many swimmers throughout the years. I'm sure you've seen a lot of crazy stuff in practice. Is there one? What's the craziest? What's one of the wildest or best or funniest things you've ever seen in a swim practice as in your time at Nashville?
Well, that's a hard question. Some of the best things would be watching Gretchen Walsh kick. It goes so damn fast. It's unbelievable. And just, beating everybody by a lot, not a little, a lot. Yeah. So I don't know. That's probably it. There's probably been a lot of funny things, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, as a coach, you want the environment to be focused, but you want it to be fun, right? You want the kids to want to be there. And we do strive for that. I mean, we do, expect them to be happy and to be having a good time. And for the most part, they do. That's not to say that things aren't hard and strenuous, but you can do the hard and strenuous stuff and still enjoy the fact that, all right, I'm a competitive swimmer on this team with this great group of people, and we're all doing this together, and we have the camaraderie and we have the kinship. So every day we're messing around with the kids, we're teasing them and asking them about their lives away from the pool, and making sure that they understand that we care about them, not just about the swimming. We want to know more about what's going on, and we want to keep it fun, and we want to keep it light, and then, all right, time to focus, here we go. And that's just a big part of it.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.